My name is Ogle, as you said. I'm mostly known in the crypto space as being a quote-unquote cyber sleuth, but I've been building for 3 years a blockchain ecosystem, we call it.
I feel like crypto is kind of such this hostile environment, not by design, but just kind of by nature.
If we can build a product with good security and good user experience, there's less likely to be as many people getting screwed.
You know, I'm optimistic for a different future, I'll say that.
Glue is essentially a decentralized Coinbase. One thing that does not exist at all outside of something like Coinbase is customer service. One thing that must exist to actually get regular people into crypto is customer service.
Why is this a decision that you guys have made?
So what we're trying to do basically is provide a situation where non-crypto businesses can make money in crypto.
And then on the UX side, why did you guys build Glue in this way? And what are your kind of strong opinions on how a user might interact with the system?
UX in crypto sucks. It's like really bad. And it's like you've for sure made this thing complicated on purpose.
Awesome. Ogle, welcome to the show. Can we start off with a brief introduction of who you are and what you're working on?
Yeah, sure. So first off, thank you very much for having me on here. My name is Ogle, as you said. I'm mostly known in the crypto space as being a quote-unquote cyber sleuth and negotiator for whenever protocols get hacked or rugged or what have you, trying to get the money back. So I've done that for a good while, and that's kind of what I'm known for. But I've been building for 3 years a blockchain, actually a blockchain ecosystem, we call it, excuse me, called Glue. And so insofar as you ask the question, what am I working on? I'm working on Glue, working on building this thing that hopefully actually changes stuff for the better. We'll see.
Phenomenal. Just to pull on that thread of negotiator, cyber sleuth a little bit, does any of that relate to how you ended up building the project that you got to today, Glue?
I think in a certain, it definitely moved where we went with some stuff. So I started working on Glue before I started doing cyber sleuth, like 1 month before I did my first recovery. And so I can't say like, oh, I've seen loads of crap and I decided to fix it, because that's not really what happened in like a direct sense. But as I've gone through and dealt with cyber criminals and seen, God knows how many of these hacks, and worked on probably 40, 45 of them at this point, it's definitely changed a lot of how we build Glue. And it's also, I think, made it a little more personal of a process, because I get to see a lot of the people who are screwed. And I know that if we can build a product with good security and good user experience, there's less likely to be as many people getting screwed and having their lives ruined the way they have been. So it's changed it from being like, oh, I would like to fix this from a technical point of view, to, oh, I would like to fix this from a technical point of view, and like I want to save Bob and Harry and Jenny and whatnot from their problems. It really has changed it a little bit, but it's not what inspired it.
It's so funny because I feel like crypto is kind of such this hostile environment, and maybe not by design, but just kind of by nature, it ends up being this hostile environment due to permissionlessness and a degree of other things. I look at Dex Screener, for example, and 20 of the 25 top projects in 1 month have gone to zero effectively, or you see honeypots, you see all kinds of stuff. So it does seem like we need a different solution to the way people onboard and interact with the space right now, other than just kind of like trading meme coins that 100x and go to zero immediately. So I know Glue has interesting thoughts about onboarding and about UX that we'll get into a little bit, but I'm optimistic for a different future, I'll say that.
That sounds good.
So anyways,
Yeah,
Glue, can you explain it to us in simple terms, and what is it?
Yeah, so the simplest way I can think about this is Glue is essentially a decentralized, let's call it like a decentralized Coinbase plus a blockchain component. And so we have an L1. The L1 is a substrate-based L1. It doesn't really matter what that means, but it's a substrate-based L1, which is great tech. And underneath it, we have L2s. And so we have L2s that focus on speed, that focus on security, et cetera. And so traditionally in crypto, there's been this trilemma, what they call the crypto trilemma, that people try to solve, where how do you get something to be very secure, but also cheap and also fast? And essentially you can't. You have to like choose a couple of those, and then you lose on the other one. And with Glue, what we decided to do was just make L2s that each of them focus on one of them pretty hard, and then make it where they can communicate with each other as opposed to being adversarial. So your balance on one of them is essentially mirrored on the other one. At the same time, you can bridge between them very easily, et cetera. So that's kind of like the structural part of Glue. But on the more front-facing side, we have this thing called the hub. And the hub is really what we're using to try and onboard what I call the buns of the burger. And so the top bun being the institutional, traditional finance, et cetera. And I can go into like how it's useful for them at some point in the future in our talk. And then the bottom bun being like just regular Joes who are not into DeFi, but they do want exposure to crypto. So really, these are the same audiences that Coinbase has, right? You have Coinbase, which is like regular Joes, and then you have Coinbase Institutional. And so these are those things. What we're not super targeting, I would say, is like the DeFi meat people, like the folks like me and you and a lot of the other folks. We have that, and we have a lot of builders who are coming on, and hopefully that turns into its own thing, because for various reasons that I think there are various reasons I think it will, but our focus is really on those buns, I would say. And so what people can do is they come in via the hub, and the hub has essentially like a CMC competitor, so a CoinMarketCap competitor. You can see all the stuff. It's already live right now, hub.glue.net. You can see that. You can customize it a lot better than the other websites. We have a portfolio manager coming in that'll show you all of your money across all the chains, not just Glue, but everywhere else. And so essentially a debank competitor, but which also includes not EVM compatible stuff. So you'll be able to have stuff from networks that are so like Cosmos, for example, or anything that's not EVM. Essentially, you'll be able to have on there as well. And then we're building out a suite of other things. You can send money back and forth. You can do these things essentially just like you're on Coinbase, down to the onboarding. So you don't even have to have a wallet. So you can use Glue, and you can be decentralized, and you can be significantly safer and never have to use a wallet. You onboard with just your email address.
So maybe you would characterize this as a DeFi hub or a crypto super app. Is that a fair characterization?
Yeah, I think it's super something for sure, because it's a whole lot of stuff. The issue we have honestly is answering questions like the one you just asked, right? Because it's like, oh, what does Glue do? And it's how many hours do we have, to answer that question? And it's really an issue that we've struggled with, and I think that most kind of big idea projects struggle with in the early stages. But right now, the best I can tell you is, it's like a super app that has something for a lot of people, but our focus is really on just regular users and TradFi.
So if we can't answer that question of what Glue is, because of the breadth of what it does, and obviously this is not the only project that faced this kind of definition area. You could argue, Ethereum, Solana, Bitcoin all face this kind of problem of scope, right? What are the main problems that Glue solves?
Yeah, so there's two main problems, I think, two major problems that exist in crypto that I think Glue works on and in many cases solves. One is, and they all come around to onboarding, really. And so when you onboard someone, first off, how do you get users? Like that's like part one of the difficulty. But once they come there, what are the two things that are problems? Usability, so user experience, and security. So how do they stay safe? And how do they know what in the world they're doing? How do they know what the words mean? How do they, that kind of stuff. And so our focus is on those two pillars, essentially. On the front side, we have a lot of user acquisition experience. My partner and I have built very large companies that are focused on, in the Web2 space, that are focused on user acquisition. So I'm not really too concerned about that side. But once they come in, how do we keep them sticky, and how do we make sure they stay safe? And so a lot of our focus is on that. So if you go to the hub, you're going to have an experience that's should be very familiar, but also cleaner. For example, the CMC competitor is faster. It has better graphs. It shows you more historical data. It's just simpler. It's not so clogged with garbage, that kind of stuff. And so it should be a better user experience. The onboarding is obviously easier because you don't need to convince people to go find a wallet, figure out what a wallet is, explain to them what the nomenclature is of tokens. What is that even? You don't have to do any of that bull crap. You can just say, put it in your email. Everyone's familiar with that. So you put it in and you get walked through. So we're solving that on the user experience side. And then on the security side, we have a few different kind of fun things that are there. So as an example, we have what's called native multisig. And so all of the transactions that happen on Glue are by default native multisig. So what this means is, if, let's say, Jack, you're wanting to send me, because I hope you do, send me $1,000. then you would get my address and you would send it to me, and that's fine. But on the other hand, if I said, hey, send me $1,000, and you sent me $100,000 on accident, or 10,000, you fat fingered it or whatever, there are ways in Glue where you can set up parameters via a third party, what we call the service layer, where you'll be able to set up parameters that send you a 2FA or a text message and say, hey, this is outside of your parameter. You said you only want to spend $5,000 a day, and you only want to deal with PancakeSwap, Uniswap, and Aave. But right now you're dealing with a different protocol than you ever said you wanted to, and you're sending $10,000. Are you sure you meant to do that? And you say, yeah, I meant to do that. Yes, confirm, whatever. And it goes through. Fine. The third party will sign the multisig. But if you say, no, I didn't, then what it does is prevents things like wallet compromises and rugs. These sorts of things are stopped before they ever happen, because something outside of the characteristic of what you usually do doesn't happen. So this is one example of, 15-ish major implementations and kind of modifications we've made to the way the security works on a chain.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about that. To some extent, your bank account is a multi-sig, although two of the signers are yourself, right? So it's like, before I input the transaction, that, initiates things, and then I get a text message, or then I get an email, and I have to approve that. And in crypto, we don't have any of that. It's either like your buddy or your business partner, or your some custody provider, and otherwise there's not really any option. And it's something I've struggled with. It's like, okay, I've got my hardware wallet, right? I've got my seed phrase hidden somewhere, but like, who is this like fail safe for me? And it's kind of broken in a lot of ways. So it's an interesting way to pursue the problem.
Well, the thing is, so like the way we have is you have four signatures, basically, actually four that can sign it. And so you have yours that you keep every day. It's just like in your wallet. No, you don't even think about it.
Right.
And then you have this third party you would give another one to. But it requires two to do anything. So what that means is basically, if the third party were compromised, so let's say you're, Mr. Third Party, and you compromise and you want to steal my money, you can't, because I'm not going to sign the transaction you do. Right. And on the other hand, if you do something bad, you try to steal stuff, and I'm like, screw this guy, I don't want to work with him anymore, he's a bad third party multisig, then I have two other signatures I can use to remove all my money, put them somewhere else, and then restart that process again. So for example, if you're compromised, or like today, these websites are compromised, we see these kind of things in large part will be prevented by having this native multisig.
Right. Let's get into the architecture of Glue a little bit, because I think it's pretty unique. So we have the Glue Hub. Is that what you would consider the layer one? Are people interacting with the Glue Hub at that layer one level?
They're interacting with the Glue Hub. No, essentially there's no interactions on the layer one level. And so the layer one is super fast because it has no scripting ability whatsoever. It's only cross-chain messaging. And so it's just connecting the L2s together, making sure they have balance, equalization, and making sure that things are going on between them. Like it continues and it makes sense and it's smooth. The Glue Hub itself, in some ways, doesn't really require you to be on a chain. I mean, you're on a chain. At the end of the day, you're on one of our chains. But as I was saying earlier, you don't actually have to have a wallet to do anything on there. So I could send you money, not a problem. I could generate a wallet address, not a problem. And none of that would require installing MetaMask. So you're on chain and you're safer than with something like, say, Gemini or Coinbase or whatever, but you might not even know that. The dream here is that we have people come in from, the subway or from wherever they see an ad, they come in and they don't even know they're on a decentralized platform, but they are. Like, that's the idea. So we make them safer without them knowing they're safer. That's for the regular users. Now, of course, for the DeFi users, it's a different ballgame, but that's for the hub.
Right. It's interesting. I just talked with a guest recently who said, I don't believe in the chain abstraction thesis. I believe that users will come to a specific place because they resonate with the brand or whatever. And I thought about that, and it's like Coinbase is almost already an extension of the chain abstraction hypothesis, meaning, people don't understand what chain they're transacting on, or don't care, they're completely ambivalent to where they are. They're just looking to get the action that they want done.
Yeah.
I think in an end state, comparing Glue to Coinbase or thinking of it in a similar way, Coinbase doesn't necessarily want people to be like, oh, I'm on Base, let me connect to the Base network. They just want people to be able to transact fluidly.
Right.
And it seems like there's a similarity here where it's like, look, we don't care what the background of all this is, right? We want to be connected to our value propositions, which is security, which is product market fit. Everything else is to some extent secondary and in service of that kind of primary value layer.
Yeah. For those users, exactly. Now, for the DeFi users, we want them to go to Base, or like our version. We want them to go there and actually do stuff, just like Coinbase does. But I mean, it's a fraction. It's a tiny, tiny fraction of the actual users who are in crypto are over on on the DeFi space. It's so small. You should maybe do a debate show. That might be fun, because I would love to chat with whoever it was, and we can have that fight.
Interesting. So getting into a bit of that value creation, tell us about the 3 L2s of Glue.
Yeah, so one of them is what we're calling a quote unquote gaming L2. It's not really gaming L2, but we're calling that just for simplicity's sake. It's very fast, very cheap. It doesn't take a long time to confirm anything. One of them is focused more on like very secure things. So like it takes a lot of confirmations before anything goes through. It's quite expensive. It's more expensive relative to the gaming one, but it's more focused on that. And so one interesting thing about these L2s that I want to note is that because they're not adversarial, that is to say, because they all kind of work together using the Glue L1, then you could theoretically have Jack.com that uses a deposit, like the deposit section uses one L2, and that's how you send it because you want it to be super secure. But when I pull the lever on the jackpot machine, it uses the gaming one, so it's much faster. And you could have this in one app. So right now the situation is like if you build on Optimism, you're building on Optimism. And so you're as fast or as slow as Optimism is, you're as secure or not as Optimism is. But in our case, you can actually use multiple L2s simultaneously because they can communicate with each other and get the access to fast or secure or whatever the case is, or cheap or whatever it is that you want to focus on in that case as an app developer. So it kind of opens up a lot of opportunities there.
And then, so a gaming L2, a security L2,
and then one is more used for, excuse me, for like balances, for bridging, like bridges that come in. So sort of like the, what you might call like a relay, sort of a, it's not one you would actually use actively. We can spin up new ones at any time. These are EVM compatible, by the way, but we can spin them up any day. And we're working on we're working with a guy on doing a Solana VM one. And so people could build, using Solana VM, so they could write in Rust and have Solana apps that are natively usable on Glue as well.
Right. And then what's the service layer and how does that connect to this whole system?
Yeah, so the service layer is, I think, one of the more awesome things we're working on. And so basically the way it works is we have what's going to look essentially like an app store inside of the hub. And so let's say that you wanted to ensure all of the transactions that you make, then we would have a third party that could be in there as an insurance provider, or 15 of them that can compete with each other. And you could say, I would like to subscribe to this insurance protocol. It says that it charges me 6 cents per transaction. It works with these different websites, and they will insure me on a transaction basis every time I do it. Fine. Click the button. Boom. Now, every time that you go and transact on Glue, an additional 6 cents for gas is sent over to this third party. And in exchange for that, they are providing you that service. And so you can think of a million different ways for this to work. And so customer service is another example that will be on there. And so one thing that does not exist at all outside of something like Coinbase is customer service. One thing that must exist to actually get regular people into crypto is customer service. And so we're working with having a third party that exists there, so you can subscribe to it. And every month you're charged the very, whatever the amount is that you've agreed to. And now you have a 1-800 number that you can say, where's my money at? I'm lost. I don't know what I'm doing. I feel like I'm confused. How did I log in? Blah, blah, blah. And this company, in exchange for that, will provide you with customer service. You can imagine like a tax company. There's a million ways here. So what we're trying to do basically is provide a situation where non-crypto businesses can make money in crypto, right? To like let them, as traditional companies, whatever it is they do, actually have a revenue model to make money inside of the crypto space that's simple for them to understand.
So it's kind of a way for a product to sit between what we would kind of conventionally think of as a crypto app and the protocol layer. It's it allows people to interact with the chain in a way that we haven't really seen possible.
I've never seen it. I think we invented it. I hope so. And I'm really hoping it works out. It reminds me a lot of like the early days of the Apple App Store. People were like, "What's the point? We already have a mail app. We already have we already have a calendar. We already have all this stuff." But whenever they opened up the App Store, then really good stuff came out. And so in our case, we have a DEX, by the way. We have a lending and borrowing platform. All this stuff already exists inside of the hub. So we don't like need Uniswap to come over for you to do trades. That's not necessary. We don't need Aave to come over, but we would rather make a system where third parties can come in very easily and we can just sort of plug them in and they do a good job by us making that experience, by us sort of setting standards pretty high and then making it easy for them to onboard new users. This is an example of how we're trying to do that.
Excellent. On the tech side, you guys have kind of a unique approach, and I guess we're seeing a bit more of it, but it's borrowing from multiple kind of platforms. So the first one being EVM, right? You guys are currently, or the L2s are currently EVM compatible.
Right.
You're built on top of a substrate, which is Polkadot.
Right.
You mentioned Solana VM, being a potential new L2. How do you think of the tech stack? How does it serve kind of Glue users?
I think that so we basically started off with Polkadot, and I think that Polkadot has, from a technical perspective, everything exactly right. I think that from a business perspective, from as we've seen recently, a marketing perspective, as from essentially every other perspective, they do everything wrong. Like auctioning off their L2s, stupid idea. How do they spend their money? Stupid. How do they run their company, generally speaking, internally? Really bad. How do they treat their developers? Awfully. Just everything is done wrong, but the tech is good. And so we said, okay. Let's start there, and then we'll build on top of that and try to be as inclusive as we possibly can in all the other ways, and then use our experience having built large companies in the marketing space, the advertising space, and technology space, use that experience to try and do these other things correctly that they screwed up on, basically. And we'll iterate and we'll add on things, which is where the native multisig comes from, the service layer, this kind of stuff. But it was built on the back of what I think is just fantastic tech.
Excellent. And then the secondary layers, EVM, is that to be kind of developer friendly? How do you think about that?
Yeah, so the idea with doing the L2s originally as EVM is just because there's more people developing on EVM. It's really that simple, but not everyone is. Like a lot of people write in Rust, right? And so you want to have the ability for Solana folks to come in, or other people who write in Rust, Web 2 developers who do the same thing. It's just building a Solana VM is like there's not one you can just plug in, basically. So it requires some build, but it is in the works, and so it will exist. And the good thing about Polkadot is you can have all these. The Polkadot, the substrate system. The good thing about this is you can have all these things if you use the L1 properly, which I think we are.
And then on the UX side, why did you guys build Glue in this way, and what are your kind of strong opinions on how a user might interact with the system?
Yeah, so my strong opinion, since you said the word strong, is that UX in crypto sucks. It's like really bad. It's essentially never even thought about, it seems like. It maybe even is thought about, and the point is to make it difficult. You look at certain websites that friends of mine run, major websites, and it's like, you've for sure made this thing complicated on purpose. You can't tell me that you didn't. This is you showing off how smart you are. That's all this is. Let's be honest. And that I think is not good. It's just not useful. If you want to bring people into the crypto space, which everyone ostensibly wants to do, if you want the masses to be involved, which everyone ostensibly wants to have happen, then you have to make things that are approachable to the masses. It's not like, if you went out and you said, hey, this is how you get onto computers, and you give them Linux or like a text-based console, and you say, enjoy yourself, you're never going to get anybody in. It requires things like Mac or like Windows, or back in the day like Sun OS, to come and make things that actually look good, that are approachable, that are easy for the regular person to experience before they can dive deeper and actually understand what world they're even in. And that's our goal. It's basically to make everything to essentially approach this the way that back in the early mid 90s graphical user interfaces were being approached for computers, or the way that the World Wide Web was being approached, or the way that Andreessen did with Netscape. Making things simple and easy. I think that's the key to onboarding. And once we do that, then everybody wins. So we don't even consider ourselves competitive, by the way, with with like Arbitrum. We consider ourselves actually helpful to these guys, because if we can bring people in on the front side and actually teach them essentially how to do this stuff in a way, some fraction of them are going to say, hey, I want to explore. I want to go and see what else is out there. I want to go check it out. And those people are going to find the Arbitrums and the Optimisms and the Ethereums and so forth out in the world. But if we just throw people into that, even technically proficient people, it's confusing, probably on purpose in a lot of cases. And we don't like that. I think it's not the right way to do it.
Well, it's pretty kind of strange or ridiculous that like a crypto user for many years now, before interacting with a new protocol, I need to read the documents, right?
Yeah.
That's something that like only developers have to do for other, Web 2 apps, right? Like no one is coming on Facebook and being like, let me go to a YouTube tutorial on how to use Facebook, right? It's very intuitive. Meanwhile, if you want to use a new DEX or something, it's like, or provide liquidity, it's like a battle to do these things. And that's not how the space should work. It doesn't make any sense. It's prohibitive. It's friction. It creates friction, right? So, yeah.
I think it's mostly because it's nerds building for nerds, and I think that's okay. I mean, my background is in like computer nerd bullcrap too, so I get it. I mean, I like that stuff too. I like to be in the middle. I like to be in the code. I like to read the docs. I like that stuff, but I also know that nobody else does. Like a tiny amount of people enjoy that. Essentially, just like you're saying, essentially nobody does. Like why? So why would you put that barrier up there? What's the point? Why create that friction when you can not? And so we're just not. We're just abstracting away, as your former guest says is a bad idea. We're abstracting away essentially all of the complication and making it super simple on the front side. And then if you want to get into advanced mode, so to speak, if you want to go into the nitty gritty, not a problem. Go do it. It's there. But my mom shouldn't do that. Like my little sister shouldn't do that. Why would they have no interest in this?
Right. And I can think of two apps that actually do this quite well, where it's like, I don't need to read before I interact with this layer. And it's like Coinbase is one of them, and Robinhood, which is not necessarily crypto native, is another one of these where it's like, this is
exactly.
Put in your email,
Exactly.
So, yeah. I think, and to your point in design philosophy, this does require, innovation on multiple fronts. You can't just say, let's have a new wallet, which you put your email in, and you don't have to set up your wallet in this new way to interact with crypto. Like, it requires more than that, because you connect to an app and you still face the same frictions. Yep. Or, you can have a great app, but then you have to use MetaMask and that's unintuitive, and you have to click 7 times for every transaction, and you have to wait 20 minutes to bridge. Like it requires this kind of comprehensive overhaul of infrastructure.
Which is why we had to make our own swap and make our own lending and borrowing platform and all that stuff, because we said we can't really rely upon other people to buy into this at first. So we'll just do it ourselves, and then hopefully they do a better job than us later.
Yeah, and then so these are kind of all of the philosophies that encompass why Glue is what it is. Do you think of Glue having weaknesses relative to these other platforms?
Yes, it does have weaknesses, I think, in some ways. I think one of the weaknesses is that it's like in this philosophy, it's a little bit undermining, I think, of the way that a lot of decentralized finance works. And so it's more centralized in a certain sense, at least at first. Mm-hmm. Over time, it won't be. We'll have a zillion validators. We had a validator sale with hundreds of people who came in, so we're going to be fine. But it's not going to be as decentralized as something like Ethereum. We're not going to have the probably backing of some of the people who we would hope to have backing from in this. So we're not going to be launching day one with some of the bigger protocols on there. We do have some great partners coming on, but we're kind of undermining a little bit of the existing ecosystem, and I think in a certain way that's definitely a weakness. We're going against the tide there. I think that as a system itself, there is some amount of weakness there too, because a lot of the difficulty that comes from some of the way that DeFi is designed and the way that trading is designed, the way that farming is designed, that difficulty is what enables you to have really high returns. And so if you make something really hard and only a few people can figure it out, then only a few people get the fruits of that labor, and therefore each person gets more money and or more of whatever that fruit is. In our case, if we make things easier, then I think it's going to be less likely that someone could come on there and earn 1,000% APR on single stake whatever token, because we're going to make it very easy for everyone else to press that same button and go in there and start earning as well. So it's going to democratize that, which I think in some ways is a quote unquote weakness because more people are involved. But ultimately I do think that weakness is kind of a, it's the right thing probably. Whenever you look at like the graph of like like an economic graph, you have a point of inflection. Basically, you have a point where things are like they actually make sense. Where like there's like not so much arbitrage in them. You know what I'm saying? And we're getting closer to that, which is not good in some ways.
It's the bigger pie versus the bigger slice of the pie question, right?
Yeah.
We can have a universe where we have an enormous pie and everyone gets a little piece of that pie, but they're much better off in the long run because they have much more pie. So it's like, do you want this tiny, tiny pie or do you want this massive pie and a bit of a smaller relative chunk of it? Well, everyone is better off having a little chunk of a massive pie. And I think this is the vision that you guys are getting at.
Well, and some people want to, have their pie and eat it too, right? And that's just not possible, I think, in this case.
And some people want to just have the biggest chunk of the pie relatively, and that's like these crypto nerds who really want to kind of isolate the space and be like, I am important, I am a big fish in a small pond, and that's they're fighting for social status relative to like optimizing for wealth or societal benefit or anything here.
I'll tell you, Zach, I got into crypto in late 2012, man, and like the space has changed a lot in like it's changed a lot. Like back then the idea was really let's democratize stuff. Let's give everybody a lot of power. And it's just changed a lot in the past like 6-7 years, I would say. Hopefully this kind of swings that pendulum back at least a little bit the other way. I guess we'll see. But I mean, we have a kind of a new good old boys club, I guess is what you're describing. And it's fair enough. People want to maintain what they've got, but
But you're focused a little bit more on bringing these new participants to the club. So I think that's a noble goal. Talking about your front end, you admit yourself that it's not permissionless, nor is any front end at this point. And I know that's a problem people are working on. Why is this a decision that you guys have made? Why is the Glue Hub kind of Web 2 adjacent?
Because we want the quality to be good. It's really that simple. And if you don't have some control over what happens in front of the hub, I mean, in something like the hub, then you'll end up with just a bunch of scams on there. Like if you can imagine a totally permissionless situation in an early protocol, then smart bad actors would come in and take as much control of that as they possibly can, and then essentially just usurp the protocol itself. Or usurp the users who usurp the hub where the users are coming into, and it would just be harmed. And so I think that most people, so if you read the writings on decentralization from some of the people who originally wrote about it, some people like Vitalik, for example, you see that like most people look at this whole process as a slow unwinding or a slow decentralizing as being the safest and most reasonable way of doing it. And that's the approach we're taking. I just don't believe in decentralization as like a maxim to live by. It makes no sense. Like if I wanted to decentralize, like for example, if I wanted to decentralize tonight, if I had me and you and 3 of our buddies were over here and we want to decentralize the choice of where to eat, and none of us are from here though, we're in some, or like one of us is from here, but everyone else is not. That's the stupidest way to do it. Actually, what you should do is be like, oh, Jack, you're from that place. You know all the best restaurants. Tell us where we should go. That's actually what makes the most sense because you are the more qualified one to make that choice at the moment. Now, as we all hang out and we go to 4, 5, 10, 15 places, then we will start to say, hey, what's everyone think? Where do we want to go back to? Then we decentralize that process a little bit and we can kind of make a quorum decision on, okay, we'll go to the Thai place tonight. But in the beginning, you're the one who actually knows the best. So why would I not listen to you? Because you live there. I don't,
Right.
And so I think this is like a similar idea.
Yeah, kind of a curation versus and you're not making anyone go to the restaurant, but you're curating the experience and saying, look, here's my opinion, here's these options, you know, and then yeah, you're right, you know, as people educate and participate, then the decentralization component comes about.
Yep.
So talk to us a little bit about like how you guys are planning on reaching these masses. Obviously saying we want to onboard institutions, we want to onboard individuals, you know, everyone does. How are you guys going to approach that problem?
So I'll say this. So let's talk about institutional first. So the value add with institutional that you might be able to imagine using the kind of limits, the multisig stuff, is something I've been talking for over 2 years with people about. We've been building this thing for 3 years. It's not like we're like, oh, let's make another L2, you know, because it's hot. We've been doing this for a long time. And so I've been having dinners with the heads of the very name brand traditional finance companies for a while now. And I asked them, I say, why don't you guys use crypto? Like, why don't you use DeFi? There's a lot of trading opportunities there. You guys could do well for your people by doing that. And they say, we can't, it's not safe. And that's really what it boils down to. It's not safe. So if we get money stolen, we can't get it back. And so in our situation, basically, we give them the opportunity via some of those guardrails to do that. So if let's say that you're traditional finance company A and you have 5 traders that work with you, and you want them all to have exposure to crypto, but you don't want them to spend more than $100,000. You don't want them to trade anything besides BTC, ETH, and Glue. And you want them to only use Uniswap and say one other protocol. Then you could set that up where inside of Glue, they only can do these things. They can only spend $100,000 a day. They can only interact with these particular projects that you know are not going to rug you, et cetera. So now you have basically a closed ecosystem that your people can make money on by using whatever trading acumen they have, but in a way that's safe for the people who have lent you the money, for the people you have fiduciary duties to. So we intend on bringing them in by essentially the last 2 and something years of me working those relationships to build something that actually makes sense for them. I think that'll be a relatively straightforward process once we actually get things live. On the other side, you know, as I was mentioning, my partner and I have both built quite large businesses that are focused entirely on user acquisition. And by that, I mean, my partner's company sends several billion emails a month. And gets millions and millions of people going to the front end of his websites every day that are essentially like kind of valueless users that then are upvalued through the cycle that he puts them in, what they call the funnel. I've done similar stuff, and I've built and sold companies in that space doing the same thing. I think we'll be using similar ways to do this. Like, if you think about how does Coinbase get users, it's not by advertising in Bitcoin Magazine, right? It's not by you know chatting on those kind of ways. It's by talking on Trade Talks, NASDAQ Trade Talks. It's by going on CNBC. It's by putting ads by the subway stations down in Financial District. It's by putting stuff in Nebraska that says, hey, if you have money sitting around and you want to earn 12%, go to this website and put in your email. Like it's just basic, old school. How do you approach regular people advertising? And it's something that we have a lot of experience with, and I think we'll do well with.
Right. Yeah, I think about that a lot. Is like the DeFi native is already has access to all this stuff. So it's actually really hard to convert a DeFi native from GMX to Hyperliquid or X exchange to the other exchange. They already have access to all these things. Where the opportunity is the people that don't participate, and that's where you can create a new user.
Totally agree. For the regular DeFi folks, though, I do think we have some stuff that's compelling for them. So this thing called Glue Security Fund, I don't know if you've heard about it or read about it, but it's basically a thing we've set aside, and for every transaction that goes on Glue, a tiny amount goes into what we call the Glue Security Fund. And what that does is for projects that want to build on Glue, some of them we're going to do audits for them. Instead of them having to pay for audits themselves, which are very expensive, we have partnerships with some name brand auditing companies, discounts on there, and then we will cover that to make sure that they're safe and we're safe and they can build on there. So I think that's actually attractive to DeFi people who are building. And then we have this other thing called Glue Security Fund, part of the Glue Security Fund, where basically we take a component or an amount of that and chase after these bastards who steal money. And so my background, I think, is credible enough in chasing down people and getting them arrested or getting the money back, that if someone comes to Glue and they steal $25,000 from some protocol, we'll put $250,000 into chasing them down and making sure that we get it back. And so does that mean that we're going to be flawless or invincible? It does not. But if you're a thief and you can go to one store, say call it Ethereum store, and the doors are wide open, and you can just, there's no clerk in the front, there's no cameras anywhere. You can go in there and steal, and we're on the honor system where hopefully you pay $5 for your food. That's one option. Or you have another store right next to it where they have guns and they have an effing turret, on the top, machine guns. You have you have chains everywhere. Who do you steal from? It just doesn't make sense to go to that one. And so we're just trying to set ourselves up such that we have these turrets and machine guns and bodyguards and so forth. And so it's just unattractive to come. But if someone does, we will. And I'm telling people here who are listening, if they are bad, I will go even harder at you than I ever have for any of these other projects that I've helped out with. We will make sure we get you back. So don't do it. And I think that's attractive for DeFi users. back to the point. I think that will be attractive to DeFi as a DeFi users.
Right. Yeah, preventing kind of the risk of hostile actors. Your guys' go-to-market strategy is more around users than developers. Why is that the case? And do you sacrifice anything if at all, around the developers, around the apps?
Yeah, I think we sacrifice a lot there, definitely, because developers are used to getting grants and a bunch of money, and basically they're used to being sort of coddled and begged, to come and do stuff. And we made the decision a long time ago when we decided to build our swap and build our own lending platform and all that stuff that we're just not going to do that. I don't really believe in the philosophy of if you build it, they will come. I don't think that makes any sense. And so we would like to have people come, and then that will entice people to build. I think that our expertise is more along those lines in terms of user acquisition, but I also think it's just a better metric. It's just a better way to do it in general, is to have people come on board, have them have an experience, and then when others see an opportunity, they'll come take it. Base didn't pay Uniswap to come over there. That didn't happen. I remember the first 2 weeks of Base, Uniswap didn't exist there. But then Uniswap came there. Why? Because a lot of people were using Base. So it makes sense. So, I imagine this sort of being the same thing. But yeah, we do give up, I think, in the early days, we're going to give up traction, I think, in that way, in terms of new projects launching and that sort of stuff. We've already had this situation. We were talking to, a partner who I've known for, they actually launched off of my old Telegram group, and they're a big project now, but they launched out of my old Telegram group. So I'm thinking, this one's in the bag. These guys are going to come on Glue. They're old buddies of mine, and they said, hey, look, we're looking for, we're very cautious which chains we use. We want to make sure there's a grant involved. We have a lot of resources involved, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, dude, even you guys are so brainwashed by this stuff. Like even you are expecting this. So fine, whatever. We'll just do it ourselves. We'll do it live, and then other people can come on after that. Fine with me.
Mm-hmm. So the last thing I'd like to chat about is what's in store for Glue. What's the timeline of all the products you guys are launching, and what's the next year look like for Glue?
Yeah, so we have a super beta right now of our hub that's live. It's at hub.glue.net. Emphasis on super and beta, it's super beta, but it does work. It's actually existing. But every week or so, we're rolling out a new feature on that. So people kind of keep an update there. Go make an account. I would say I encourage people to make an account. Not saying there's anything happening from that, but who knows? Make an account, play with it, go check it out. And if you have feedback, let us know how you're feeling about it. That kind of thing would be really great for people who do that. Probably. And I would say that's something I would say is worth looking out for. And then on the market side, we did an LBP back in late February, a liquidity bootstrapping pool via Fjord. We did that back in late February using a secret name, by the way. We didn't say our actual name in that, but it crushed. It did really well. And then 3 years ago, we did a seed raise, which my partner and I put in a good chunk of change to as well. At a very high valuation, by the way. Our seed was at $254 million. So nobody here is getting rich off of the next round. So we're going to do an IDO to answer your question. The IDO is going to be across a few platforms. We have not announced what those are, but we do have the deals set up for those, and potentially one exchange in that case as well for an IEO. That'll be, so today is it's the middle of July right now. The IDOs should be in the next 3 to 4 weeks is what we're shooting for. So pretty soon, pretty soon. Now, if the market craps out, then we'll probably chill and just wait for it to be the right time. But we're going to do that. It's going to be totally fair. No VCs are getting special deals here. is egalitarian as it gets. Like, you're not going to find a fairer cap table, I think, than what we have. We have nobody who has, even ourselves, who have anything meaningful, to screw people on here, to like dump on them or anything like that. So our hope is that we come out of the gate and everyone's like, okay, these guys are actually thinking about us, and I think there's going to be some problems with that probably, because we're not going to get the support from some of the VCs and stuff that would have loved to have gotten into 1000x. But I think in the end, it's better for the users if we do it this way. So yeah, we're doing the IDO next 3 or 4 weeks ideally, and then onward and upward. Mainnet and TGE will be right after that. It'll be essentially within the next week or so, and then we'll be live.
Phenomenal. Anything you'd like to plug right now? Where can people find you?
They can find me personally, me personally on Twitter's probably the easiest one, at Cryptogle, CRYPTOGLE. And then Glue is at GlueNet, GLUENET. But I'll tell you something for the first time that I've told anybody, Jack, is that in the next few days, people are going to be able to go to at Glue, just GLUE, and that'll be our new Twitter at that point. So depending upon when this gets published, either go to GlueNet or at Glue, and that'll be where we are. And from there, you can see the links to our Telegram and so forth.
Phenomenal. Ogle, thanks so much for coming on. It's been an excellent chat, and I'm really excited to see what comes out around Glue in coming weeks and months. Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot, Jack. Take care. Have a good day.